TIL, that the first ever science fiction novel, a true story, was written in the 2nd century AD. The novel includes travel to the outer space, flying to the moon, alien life forms, interplanetary warfare and continents across the ocean. The best part is when someone finally gets around to making the movie about this, with its interstellar warfare and alien characters. They can accurately state in their opening frame, based on a true story. I would love it. A true story, starring Dwayne Johnson. The story takes place in the distant future, 500 AD. Eventually the series runs out of ideas and switches to prequels set in 300 AD that strangely have even cooler tech. A true story, Discovery. Time travelers are getting cocky, I see. Legit my initial thought. To any time traveler that reads this, draw a penis on some famous building. Eiffel Tower, am I a joke to you? Continents across the ocean? Preposterous. One of my friend's relatives swore he was abducted by visitors from another continent, taken aboard their ship, and whisked away to do manual labor for them on their agri factories. We think he's a little crazy, but he swears it's all true. That makes no sense. Why would they come all that way and not anally probe us? The funny thing is that it was actually a parody of tales of crazy things being reported as true, based on even older stories, according to Herodotus. Alright, I'm done. This thread has finally broken me. Well done, lad. That last one, continents across the ocean, sounds a little far-fetched. I could see the rest of it though. Imagine discovering a new continent in 2019. I wonder Illusion's reaction would be if you could go back and inform him. Yeah, so these outrageous tall tales. See, this one and that could conceivably happen at some point. And this bit over here turned out to actually be true. I know, they showed me. Honestly, it's like every other day with you time travelers. I get it. You're from a different time. This has been on my list for a while. Anyone know if it's any good? If you enjoy this line, you'll love it. Some of them desired to have carnal mixture with us. The more recent introduction chapter is quite dry, but can be skipped. Start reading Formed Illusion, his true history chapter. Is that the earliest fantasy of banging alien chicks I've ever saw? I don't think those were aliens. The adventurers were still on Earth at this point. It was a group of creatures who are women from the groin area upwards, and their bottom portions were trees. Their fingers and hair were twisting vines with leaves and fruit. They basically asked the group of adventurers if any of them wanted to fuck, and 2 of the adventurers obliged. The rest of them were wise to avoid the 6, because the 2 that did the deed became engulfed by the tree vine babes, and turned into tree vine dudes themselves, joined at the groin to the strange women. It's a really interesting and entertaining read. I like how continents across the ocean was up there with space travel in terms of mind-blowing speculative fiction at the time. Life becomes science fiction if you give it enough time. Here's an example. In Star Wars, a common technology that most everyone has is called a datapad. It's a futuristic device the size of a small textbook with limitless information accessibility. It's essentially an iPad, but you must always write a diary entry in it right before being killed, accidentally leaving a hint for the next person who comes along on what and where to find the thing that will kill the monster that is about to kill you. You must also be holding the datapad in your hand as you get killed, so they find it attached to your arm in a corridor 200 meters away somehow. I got this for my mother for her birthday years ago, and she said it was really good. A little hard to read as the is written very different. Well, the is written very different, so maybe do make hard. Why waste time say a lot word when few word do trick? Tim Apple. So, how does Tale of Genji still hold the title as the world's first novel, given that this seems to be a novel written earlier? The structure, mostly. Genji is not overly driven by plot, and is focused on language and characterization over plot concerns, putting it in the genre of literary, i.e. slice of life, fiction. Obviously, 20th century literary writers want to enhance their ep, and so this became the first novel, rather than any number of fictional travelogues or legends. Personally, even if we only count character-driven literary fiction, I think the Egyptian 12th dynasty story of Sinu edges it out by a few thousand years. TLDR. Genre is in the not a novel ghetto. Edit. I just want to say that Book of Genji is awesome on its own account and you should all read it. This looks like a Terry Gilliam movie. Very much like the adventures of Baron Munchausen, especially the trip to the moon, the king of the moon, and falling from the moon to the realm of Vulcan and Venus. I haven't read the original Baron Munchausen books, but my understanding is that the tales aren't structured like this. I have to wonder if Gilliam borrowed certain element of the film's structure from a true story. Edit. Also, being swallowed by a whale and escaping by way of making the whale sneeze. The film is based on a book from the 18th century by Rudolf Erich Raspe, and, IRC, pretty faithful to the source material. That said, Raspe was a scholar and worked for a time as a librarian, so he may have come across a true story. How do we know if an ancient text was meant as fiction? I know the Book of Enoch and some ancient texts we consider semi-religious have almost sci-fi content too. The author wrote this as a satire against those who believed at the time that myths were true stories. He even explains at the beginning that everything that happens is completely made up. I thought planetary theories didn't start cropping up until much later in history. I didn't read the book, but someone else mentioned the war was actually between the moon and the sun, not between separate planets. People back then were well aware of the existence of the sun and the moon, so that explains it a little. Would be really impressive though, if they invented the concept of other planets like ours, before it was an accepted thing. Lucian also wrote the earliest known version of The Sorcerer's Apprentice, which I view as the example of an AI rebellion storyline. A programmer is harmed by their creation not because it goes against their orders, but because it follows their orders to a much greater extent than they were anticipating. Well, is it actually any good? Like entertaining? If you're interested in this time period, Lucian is the most entertaining author of all antiquity. He basically invented satire and wrote some really funny shit. I always get some good chuckles out of it. I love Lucian. He's cheeky, catty, and goes completely over the top. If you don't want to jump straight into his longer stuff, Court of the Vowels is a pretty good microcosm of his kind of humor. This is how it begins. Even as champions and wrestlers, and such as practice the strength and agility of body are not only careful to retain a sound constitution of health, and to hold on their ordinary course of exercise, but sometimes also to recreate themselves with seasonable intermission, and esteem it as a main point of their practice. So I think it necessary for scholars, and such as addict themselves to the study of learning, after they have traveled long in the perusal of serious authors, to relax a little the intention of their thoughts, that they may be more apt and able to endure a continued course of study, and this kind of repose will be the more conformable, and fit their purpose better, if it be employed in the reading of such works as shall not only yield the bare content by the pleasing and comely composure of them, but shall also give occasion of some learned speculation to the mind, which I suppose I have effected in these books of mine, wherein not only the novelty of the subject, nor the pleasingness of the project, may tickle the reader with delight, nor to hear so many notorious lies delivered persuasively, and in the way of truth, but because everything here by me set down doth in a comical fashion glance at some or other of the old poets, historiographers, and philosophers, which in their writings have recorded many monstrous and intolerable untruths, whose names I would have quoted down, but that I knew the reading would betray them to you. Ctesias, the son of Ctesiachus, the Cnidian, wrote of the region of the Indians and the state of those countries, matters which he neither saw himself, nor ever heard come from the mouth of any man. Iambulus also wrote many strange miracles of the great sea, which all men knew to be lies and fictions, yet so composed, that they want not their delight, and many others have made choice of the like argument, of which some have published their own travels and peregrinations, wherein they have described the greatness of beasts, the fierce condition of men, with their strange and uncouth manner of life, but the first father and founder of all this foolery was Homer's Ulysses, who tells a long tale to Alcinous of the servitude of the winds, and of wild men with one eye in their foreheads that fed upon raw flesh, of beasts with many heads, and the transformation of his friends by enchanted potions, all which he made the silly Phaeacs believe for great sooth. This coming to my perusal, I could not condemn ordinary men for lying when I saw it in request amongst them that would be counted philosophical persons, yet could not but wonder at them, that, writing so manifest lies, they should not think to be taken with the manner, and this made me also ambitious to leave some monument of myself behind me, that I might not be the only man exempted from this liberty of lying. And because I had no matter of verity to employ my pen in, for nothing hath befallen me worth a writing, I turned my style to publish untruths, but with an honester mind than others have done. For this one thing I confidently pronounce for a truth, that I lie, and this, I hope, may be an excuse for all the rest, when I confess what I'm faulty in, for I write of matters which I neither saw nor suffered, nor heard by report from others, which are in no being, nor possible ever to have a beginning. Let no man therefore in any case, give any credit to them. Desanturing on a time from the Pillars of Hercules, the wind fitting me well for my purpose, I thrust into the West Ocean. The occasion that moved me to take such a voyage in hand, was only a curiosity of mind, a desire of novelties, and a longing to learn out the bounds of the ocean, and what people inhabit the farther shore, for which purpose I made plentiful provision of victuals and fresh water, got 50 companions of the same humor, to associate me in my travels, furnished myself with store of munition, gave a round sum of money to an expert pilot that could direct us in our course, and new rigged and repaired a tall ship strongly, to hold a tedious and difficult journey.